how do you plan on keeping the DEP, in some cases, involved when it needs to be and not involved when it doesn't need to be? Because they exercise what I consider undue control of the South Florida Water Management District for the last 8 years.
That's very interesting. All I know...
The Water Management District by statute actually falls underneath the DEP. The DEP technically is the regulatory arm.
And the DEP falls underneath the governor.
Underneath the governor.
So
the governor has
if the DEP was basically useless...
Yeah. But they weren't useless.
But that is if that's how someone feels, they have to trace it back to the governor.
Right.
The governor, because the governor is above DEP. Okay, I'm going to continue, and then we can totally have questions. The theme so far, and it's one you're already familiar with, but it's a good reminder, is to do your homework, read the agenda, be prepared. And the other thing I'm going to ask you to do right now is if you have a calendar on you, okay, I'd like you to get out your calendar or make a note for yourself that you're going to send an email to the South Florida Water Management District once every 6 months. Once every 6 months. That's not that much. You could do more if you wanted, but as a minimum, you're going to send some kind of email once every 6 months. I use a paper calendar, so I would go and I would circle that, and I would write that down. Now, when you go to write an email, Nick, I'm going to ask you, Nick Mader, do you think you could still apply the personal stories thing? Yes. And I will tell you, as someone who read thousands of emails during the Constitution Revision Commission and sat with other people, you start noticing when they all look the same and you don't read the full thing. You don't, because you know how like people will have those type that are like, they're like a whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah, you can recognize it in the title, and so at a certain point, if you have to read 1,000 emails, I'm not opening them. If I know that I'm just not. You know what I mean? That personal email with that personal subject line, that will get you so much more. I mean, if you have to send them out en masse, that's okay, but because they'll know how many, they'll count how many. But if you want someone to read them, tell them your personal story. Rick, what's going on at Sailfish Point that's pretty cool? What's a story that you could tell about what's going on in Sailfish Point? Super awesome community, major tax money for our community coming out of there. What could you tell the district that you care about?
Well, now you want it for the district.
Yeah.
Our members care so much about cleaning up the environment that all year long, one of our members, Randy Hoover, organized a beach cleanup first Wednesday of every month. The average age of our beach cleanup people is probably between 60 and 70. They pick up pounds and pounds and pounds of beach trash, mostly plastic. And we have some very creative people who have now produced 10 pieces of beach trash art, which are on display in Sailfish Point's clubhouse. We are awarding prizes tomorrow night at our end of season recognition dinner. We invited to judge our art contest 3 notable people in Martin County, including Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch, Mark Perry, and Elizabeth from the Martin County Community Foundation, and we will be announcing the winners tomorrow. But this is pretty unique for us that people of our age and our standing in the world are out picking up trash because we want to make a difference. Thank you.
Okay. Dennis, give a round of applause. You guys, there's not a story that like says I'm mad about the river or toxic algae or like, you know, the world's falling apart. It's actually a very feel-good story, but you can tell a story like that too, because it shows, for me, that people who might not live here all year round still care about our environment. Don't take this the wrong way, but people with money care about the environment. Poor people care about the environment. Happy people care about the environment. Sad people care about the environment. Republicans care about the environment. Democrats care about the environment. Everybody cares about the environment. Tell a personal story when you talk. You will become the most interesting person in the room when you tell your personal story. Include, you know, not just the horror story of the St. Lucie River, but the personal story. Now, because of the changes of Governor DeSantis' executive order 1912, and because some of us started pushing, do you know there wasn't even a way to contact the district, like if you were the media, when I first got on? I'm like looking on the website, I'm like, how do you like contact these people? It was like hermetically sealed, you know, it was just the way it was. But now, if you go to the website, and I wish I could pull it up, but I can't, it's kind of, and people are complaining about this. You may have read some, and it's okay. The Okeechobee News like wrote this thing, and they're like, they're asking the people? Oh my gosh, they're asking the people? You know, why would you do that? But it's because, you know, there's a lot of serious stuff, and they feel like, why is the public making comments on flood control? Well, it's our taxpayer agency. We're allowed to make comments on anything we want. So if you go online right now, it's Conservation Month, you know, so you'll see this picture of this beautiful little child, little girl, watering the plants. And do you notice anything up at the top, even without it being online? Do you notice anything up at the top?
Orange.
That orange thing, okay? That orange thing says, ask us. Isn't that nice for the South Florida Water Management District? Isn't that nice? Ask us. Oh, we'll ask you. We'll tell you too. But the bottom line is if you click on that one thing that's right there in the front, you know, right at the front, you go onto the website, it's right there in the front, that orange thing, this will come up. And what it is it says, we want to learn, is that what it says? Oh no, sorry, couldn't be that good. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. So you can go on. If you have your phone right now, you might be able to figure this out, although it's different on the phone than when you go on the computer. But I'm going to ask Marty to read this out loud, because I know how much Marty loves the South Florida Water Management District. Come on up. Just read this. I just want him to read what it says, since we don't have a machine here. You want this?
Yeah.
I sense tension.
We want to hear from you. Governor DeSantis is calling for increased public participation with the South Florida Water Management District. The district's governing board is seeking extensive public input in setting the agency's priorities. Governor DeSantis directed our agency to immediately start the next phase of the EAA project design, expedite completion of Everglades restoration projects, including the C-43 reservoir to include a water quality feature, and the C-44 stormwater treatment area and the Tamiami Trail bridging project. Identify projects that currently support nutrient reduction and seek out opportunities to add additional mechanisms to reduce nutrient impacts and increase transparency and agency accountability. Please use this forum to share your comments directly with our agency and the governing board. All input received by April 29, 19 will be given to the governing board for the May 9, 2019 regular business meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for Marty. Yes, Jackie.
I'm going to explode if I don't say this. Executive Order 1912. Is it retroactive at all? Because last year, when we were involved in the Lake Point, South Florida Water Management District lawsuits, and people tried to get public records, we were denied them at every turn. And then when the public went to the South Florida Water Management District, they were threatened with lawsuits if they didn't stop.
Right.
So I would hope that that kind of nonsense goes away. Or that we could now ask for some of those public records so that we would know exactly what happened in retrospect.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much. And I don't think any executive order is retroactive.
No, I don't know.
I think an executive order is an executive order. And, you know, Ms. Transiger, Jackie, it's just like a lot of things in life, okay? We have this all the time. And it's not good, it's the imperfect world we live in. One thing's happen under one governing time, you know, look at Nazi Germany. You know what I'm saying? Things happened, but you know, over time, people try to redeem themselves from that, but you can't change that it happened. And so I think that's, I think you should come and ask for what you want, but I do not expect that to happen again.
I was just going to say that could be another thing that the South Florida Water Management District Inspector General, who takes direction from the governing board, could look into, because that's pretty egregious. You know, we as the member public want to know something, and you're going to sue me over that. You know, that's about as bad as I've heard of.
And there's sunshine laws in place. I mean,
It was, I'm trying not to get too caught up in the past. I'm trying to keep my hand on the wheel of the Titanic and move it, but you're right, there were egregious things that happened. So, yes?
one of your points up there says identify projects that currently support nutrient
Right.
reduction. And I think the most important thing is the stopping the permitting at the source, at the farms and ranches, unless we have tested for it. And now we have said that we need more scientists to do that. But you need the money, no matter what executive order you have, you need the money, which means we need Congress to give us the money for this. So we really need to send our letters and make our calls to our representatives.
Right, absolutely. And tell me your name again, I'm sorry.
Diane Goldberg.
Diane Goldberg, thank you. And I've listened to you talk before. You're very good at expressing yourself. The bottom line here, is that, and I'm not going to get into it, but definitely, you guys, you know this from school again. We're students. You've got local government, you've got state government, and you have your federal government. So you might choose who you want to. I can't do everything, okay? And I know I can't do everything. And I don't try to do everything. I try to do what I do. And I'm praying to God that somebody else is writing somebody else that I don't have time to write. Don't get overwhelmed by this. Don't walk out the door today and not do anything because you're like, it's just too much, it's just too much, I can't do it. Choose one thing. I'm going to go to one meeting. I'm going to write 2 emails a year. Be realistic in your goals and achieve them and do them, okay? And so I think that's great, and that's just another level of what has to be done. Absolutely. Jim?
And so I was going to recommend that it's a really good place for George to talk about how to get in touch with the legislators.
Yes, perfect.
And someone, Jackie, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Interesting to people if you come up here since they're
Really wants you to come on board.
You gotta get up.
I had to write an email. Oh, I had to go to the meeting.
No problem. Well, the getting involved part is Jackie's adequately covered from the Water Management District, but on your state and federal and local levels, going to meetings is terribly important. Reading the agenda is terribly important. But also as the session approaches, it's important. There's a lot of websites that are out there that give you information. You've got a handout, I don't know, does this go out to everybody, Barbara?
I hope everybody has it. I tried to get as many copies as I can.
There's numerous groups out there
Yeah.
that do it. Audubon sends one out. I know Paul Gray's group sends legislative updates out. This one here happens to just be from the Florida Conservation Coalition, and to give you some background on them, these are a group of people that got together with Nat Reed and Bob Graham. They basically started it with Estes Whitfield. These are senior scientists that were around when good water law was made in Florida. So I tend to follow that one. They're a little bit more conservative in their approach to some things because they've been in government, most of them, but they also tell it like it is. So it's a pretty good bunch. If you look down the list that's on here, there's several different things, and there's a lot of programs. This is 2 days old, and it's probably out of date, or 3 days old. The session right now is winding down. It ends May 3rd. So anything that you need to do on this, you need to do today or tomorrow, because over the weekend, they will be working. They will be in these little rooms, and I just had a conversation with Mary who left, but city government, state, a lot of the other elements of state government, the governing board, are covered by the Sunshine Law. Your legislators aren't. They meet in little rooms and deal and wheel and spend your money and trade off what one project needs versus what another project needs, what they can get from somebody else. So it's real important that you either send them an email, and I can tell you emails are effective and they have to count the numbers, but a phone call is even more effective because it ties up their phone lines. And they don't like having a person have to sit there and answer those phones and actually take verbal comments from folks. It may not always get accurately relayed, but I can tell you it makes a bigger impression up there, especially from the staff. So there's a list of some phone contacts here, but I would tell you that if you're going to look at some of these bills and some of these things that are down here, some of them are being decided today. Some of them are being decided tomorrow. Some of them will be hung up by budget discussions that will go on over the weekend. Go back to myfloridahouse.gov or myfloridasenate.gov, which I gave you guys a little primer on, I think it was about a year ago, on how to do that. But both of those websites will give you every legislator and every commission, every conference, every whatever that's there. There's a banner across the top and it will give you how to get in touch with these people. There are some bills on here, and I got one on a couple here that I just want to mention. There's one on the online sewage treatment disposal systems. That's House Bill 973. There's also one on the Clean Water Act. That's Senate Bill 1758. I would strongly recommend that you give your legislators, your local legislators, as well as the committee chairmen of those sites, which is the agricultural and natural resource committees, a call and tell them that you would like to see them support those bills. Although the online sewage treatment one has been watered down to a large degree, it's still better than nothing, and that's my personal opinion. But I can tell you that the politics that are going on right now are watering both of these things down to the point where you may not see agreement in either one, and you may not get any bill. So that's, you know, it's a decision to be made. I don't like to recommend anything, but I would read them. Jackie?
Can you talk about why would a bill get watered down? How does that happen?
Because the cost of the enforcement is something they don't want to spend, or there's a political will not to do that. When you start talking about online sewage and disposal, there's a huge cost that goes across statewide, and most of that is looked at as a cost share back to city and state and governments, or back to city and local governments. And so the legislature has to partially fund that, or they have to fund the DEP. And part of this bill is to take the online sewage away from the Department of Health and put it under the Department of Environmental Resources. So when you do that, there's a cost. There's an administrative cost to all of those things. And so they look at the dollars. It's a bottom line scenario. And in some cases, there's areas that don't want to have to bear that cost. And so their legislature hears from their elected officials in the town or the municipality and says, we can't afford this. Unless you can fund it, we're going to give you a hard time. So it really boils down to money and to what geographical locations control most of the money in the legislature. One of the things that people in this room probably don't know is that if you took the 16 counties that are in the South Florida Water Management District, we control 73% of the votes in the House and the Senate. That's just because of the population numbers. We're huge. If that group ever voted in a block, there's nothing that we couldn't get done. So yeah, most people don't realize that, but if you look at the 16 counties that comprise the South Florida Water Management District, we control the House and Senate vote-wise if we could ever get everybody on the same page. So those are the types of things that I think you need to get involved. You also, when you go to these meetings like today, when you go back to your different associations and your different groups, you need to make sure you don't just sit at your meetings and not relay this information on. You're their representative. You need to stand up at those meetings and let them know what's going on. If you want to get engaged and get involved, don't just come to these meetings and then go sit at yours like a bump on a log. You know, you need to take what's here and make sure your group or your organization gets involved with it. Like I said, I could beat the drum up here forever, but the legislature's winding down. This has to be on the governor's desk 72 hours before the session ends, if I'm not mistaken. And so this will get done over the weekend. The session ends, I think, next Thursday or Friday. So it'll have to be on the governor's office probably by Wednesday. So I can tell you, having been up there for 3 or 4 years in a row doing this, they have meetings of the conferences, both the House and the Senate and all the different committees, and they parlay all through the weekend. And they only have to give a notice of 1 hour, period, before they get together. And so you're up there all weekend long, and you're either sitting in the Capitol on a bench, and the concessions are closed even on the weekend, so you're either sitting outside or inside, looking at your phone, waiting for them to notice that there's an hour meeting in an hour. Or you get a hotel room that's relatively close, and you sit there and wait. But that's how it's going right now. There are all kinds of wheeling and dealing. So if you want to have an influence, it's today or tomorrow, folks, because the weekend they won't be answering their phones. Jackie?
Who are the most powerful people in Tallahassee?
The chairs of the lobby, or the chairs of the... A slip of the tongue, a Freudian slip there. Actually, the lobbyists are the most powerful people up there. But the chairs of the various committees in the House and Senate, as well as the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, those are the two. And what happens is they go to conference, and they all wheel and deal and bargain. There will be some things that they will not agree on. And that gets kicked then to the House and Senate leadership. So ultimately, a lot of this will get decided by the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. Some of the very, very crucial ones that can't get worked out in conference. And it's an arduous task for anybody to have to do. And like I said, you have to realize that when they have to call these hourly meetings, most of the gallery is filled with lobbyists. They print a printout out of what's been approved in that last little conference, whether it's 6 hours or 4 hours or 8 hours ago, and they all go back and they do it again, and then they print another one. And you look through the list, and if yours isn't on there and you're a lobbyist, you start running these people down and asking them why, and what do you got to do to get it on there? And who do you got to go talk to? That's how it works. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, why do you think we don't have a bill on harmful algal blooms? We don't have a drinking water standard for cyanobacteria microcystin in the state. We don't have a statutory procedure for warnings for recreational water blooms. I know when Becky Harris was talking to somebody at the Department of Health, they said they did not have all the authorization they needed to proceed on these harmful algal blooms. So why do you think that none of the bills here touch on harmful algal blooms? We haven't even had a hearing.
The better question for that is for you to ask that of your representatives, not me. But the best question there is when your representatives come home, stand up at meetings when they have them in the public and ask them why that's not there. And those are the involvements. That's how you get involved. Like Jackie said, if you're not there, you're not in the game. We used to say in Tallahassee, if you're not in the room, you're not playing. And if you don't get in the room, that's at every hour you have to be there. And if you're, like I said, if your project's on and you need to defend it, you need to be there. And if it's not on, you need to find out why and who you need to go talk to. That's what's going on for the next 3 or 4 days up there. It's going to be crazy. Yes. Yep.
Okay. So I was just up in Tallahassee for the World Ocean Day, and I would say that the most effective thing that you can do is these are people that are enamored with tasks and chores and all kinds of things to know, and it simply can be that they don't know why to vote yes or no on something, or to pass something or not to pass something. So if you are someone that has that information, those simple facts that are credible facts, that are not just a personal experience, I would say that's almost the more important information to relay at that last minute hour, or right before that meeting. If you become a credible source that is in constant contact with your chair, or your legislator or your Republican, and you shoot that last minute information, you've got your source in that information, so they can kind of fact check it, make sure they're presenting the right information, that moves mountains for them. And and I would I'm going to try to practice that on my own, but I would say, someone had asked the question, what is the best?
Yeah, and part of what you're saying is absolutely true. No legislator can cover all the issues that they have to vote on. That's why they have staff. Staff reads through things, they brief them, they sit down with them. It's terribly important to have good staff, and that staff understands what's important to that legislator. But sometimes they have the information, it's just that it's not in their best political interest to vote for that issue. It's not always that they don't have the knowledge, but it is difficult to try to be knowledgeable about all the things that that come across their desk that they have to vote on, all the things that come up on the floor that they have to cover.
Some people were misinformed.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that.
Oh, I agree.
Because some of the representatives that we talked to, they didn't have the right information.
And it's always credible, like I said, when you can go up and present credible information, and usually when you do that, it's best to have it cited and printed out to where that source can be recognized as credible. Sherry?
When I've heard your reports when you've been up to Tallahassee, one of the things that I understand is it just seems to be such a terrible process, an unfair process. And my question is there any one or two things that we could suggest that process be reformed so that it is more representative, it's more informed, we have, so it's not, I have one issue particularly very important to me, and I've met with a couple of legislators, and they say, if you go to Tallahassee, there's literally hundreds of lobbyists against.
For the communications industry, sure.
Yes.
It's millions of dollars.
Yes, hundreds. And so the question is there something that's obvious to you, some kind of reform that would make it be more true to what the old citizens.
That's like Jackie said, that's like trying to turn the Titanic around. Two Titanics, yeah. Part of the problem, and as I explained earlier, is they're not covered by sunshine. Now I have problems with the sunshine law in general because it does inhibit a lot of local government conversation or whatever, but it's a big help too. It's like a double-edged sword. It does an awful lot of good, but it can also inhibit some things. But I would like to see some type of legislation that prohibits all these backroom deals on a regular basis. When they're meeting in conference and they're meeting in committee, I think that there needs to be public representation of some type or some recorder. There needs to be something in that room that you understand where they're back there smoking cigars and trading you 2 Babe Ruths for a Hank Aaron or something. You know, I mean, and that's what they're basically doing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had two things there. One, you got to pay these guys more. This is a $90 billion budget, and the salary for the members is like $30,000.
Yeah.
So it represents like, you know, a 0.002% or something like that. So we don't spend that much money on the top decision makers.
Right.
And that's.
It's sort of like teachers.
That means they have to rely on the lobbyists for the expertise because they also have a really small staff. So
right.
The legislature should be funded at a much higher level. The other thing you can do is the way they do their amendments. They don't just amend it with a couple lines of the new stuff. They strike the whole bill.
Right.
So if you try to read all that as a person, it is impossible, especially as the Senate closes. So there's lots of little procedural things that can be done. But the main thing is we got to pay these people more and make it a better job.
And Alex worked up there. He can tell you that it's difficult and it's tough for staff. And like you said, they don't get paid much. They're obligated to do one thing, and that's pass a budget. That's the only thing they're actually obligated to do when they get together for the 60 days. But these guys work year-round. I mean, they're in and out of the community. They're doing their thing. They're, you know, whatever. But they also hold second jobs. A lot of these guys are dentists and real estate agents, and some of them work for citrus and agriculture. Go on the web pages that are on both of those sites, and there are personal bios on all of them. It tells you what awards they've gotten and from who, which is very telling sometimes. And it tells you how many family members they have, where they went to school. It gives you some history, so you have some feel of what's important to them legislatively, why they got in it in the first place.
George.
Most of them, I think a lot of people that start out in politics, and we can always get jaded, but then most people that start at the local level have good intentions when they start. And as it gets piled higher and deeper, it gets more difficult for them to continue to keep their head above water. Barbara?
George, Regina asked me where I got this. This is from the Florida Conservation Coalition website. That is fascinating. I found out about it on Monday from George. I've been spending hours on it. Everything you want to know.
It's an excellent site.
It's fabulous. It has all the lists of everybody, all of their contact information, and that is where I got this from, and you could literally spend hours on this website. It's so fascinating.
Like I said, there are lots of good ones out there. I can tell you that there's 3 or 4 that I rely on extensively. And like I said, I know the people that started this organization, a lot of them that are still there, and I think very highly of them. So I rely on this one probably more than the rest. But it's not updated as much as some of the folks that have bigger staffs and more money. So you have to take that with a grain of salt too. This came out, I think, some of this came out, the one that's out there is April 22nd, and it's old news already to some degree.
Another thing is that spreadsheet I gave out of the contact information, I don't have a lot of the emails on that because you have to go to their site. They don't give you their email, so you have, the link is on their site. But if you go to Florida Oceanographic Society website, they have a contact your legislators page where you have the links, and you can, it's really well done, and you can go directly and send an email to them.
If you look, like I said, the 2 easiest ways to go are if you look at their email addresses that are here, it's usually their name and then at My Florida House or at myfloridasenate.gov. If you just go to My Florida House or myfloridasenate.gov, you can pull up the whole list, all the information you're ever going to need to get a hold of them or to write them or background information on them. Those are 2 excellent sites, and right across the top banner, there are all kinds of links that will take you to things that will help you understand. There's also a bill tracking site up there. And the tracking is free. They'll send the emails to your phone. You'll get tired of getting them if you're tracking several bills at once. But all those things are there. They're available to the public. And to get involved, you have to want to be involved. Nobody's going to spoon feed you all of this, and no legislator's going to spoon feed you anything other than what they want you to hear. That's just the nature of the beast. So if you want to stay involved in water issues, and one of the things that I talked to our group at a board meeting on Monday is I'd like to see us start putting out other meeting notices. There's a meeting coming up with DEP on surface water. How many people know about that? Well, surface water is terribly, Diane from Martin County, but surface water regulation is terribly important to what happens with us with all of our rivers and estuary and stuff. But does anybody see a notice on that, except unless you're on a specific mailing list? No. But once you get involved and go to one of those, then you'll be on the mailing list, and you'll start getting the notices on them. But I'd like for us to start putting them out in the newsletter. We're talking about on the board. We don't want to overload people with stuff, but we're trying to get the most pertinent meetings that involve government and regulatory agencies out there so people can start seeing them and start going to meetings and being informed. And that's just my recommendation, is that I've been at it for about 40 some odd years now, and I'm getting a little tired. I'm playing a little bit more golf and fishing, so somebody else has got to start going to more of these meetings. You know, I'm getting tired, and I still want to stay involved, and I'm still going to stay active, but it takes a village, folks. It takes all of us, and it takes not just sitting at this one, it takes going back to your groups and getting them fired up. So, you know, that's my legislative update is to stay on top of it. This session's winding down. The governor has a cooling off period. It's very important that if some of this legislation doesn't get through, that you let the governor know how unhappy you are. He can line item veto, and he can veto other things that are there. He can bring them back in special session if he wants to. So there are a lot of different avenues. Once we've put pressure on the legislation, if you still don't think you got what you need, write the governor.
Thanks, George. That's part of how you all can get involved. The other thing that you can do is let us on the Rivers Coalition